3 steps to take before mixing vocals. Hey, my name's Joe Novelli and I'm a singer and vocal arranger with the Sons of Pitches a cappella group. I also run choirs around the West Midlands and I work here at Grosvenor Road Studios in Birmingham. So here at GRS we have the biggest live room in Birmingham, perfect for larger choirs and ensembles. We have an SSL AWS 900 Plus desk. We have loads of vintage microphones including U87s, and we record and mix all kinds of music, choir, drill, trap, anything you can think of. Before we start, make sure you like this video and subscribe for more music tips. And I've got 3 other videos in this series all about recording vocals that you can go and check out now. So today we're looking at what to do before you start mixing your vocals. So in this instance, we've already got our vocals recorded, so you might be tempted to dive straight into the fun stuff like reverbs, delays and effects, which make your vocals sound really cool. But if you miss these essential steps to take before mixing, it's going to come and bite you in the back later on. Let's get into it. So here's a little line I recorded earlier, nothing fancy, just something for us to work with. When you need me, I will comfort you. So first of all, the first thing I would do when I've got our vocal recordings is cut the silences from the recordings. So although we call them silences, there's going to be some room noise in there, there's going to be some noise from knocking about and rustling about. So we need to get rid of as much of that as possible to get the cleanest recording we can. So how I would do that, nice and easy, is all I do, I'd look at the waveforms. You can press this little button here, which actually amplifies the size of the waveform, so you can see it a bit clearer. And all I'm doing is I'm listening through. When you need me. So I actually decide I don't actually need that first breath. All this to me is silence. So all I'm going to do is chop up to this point. You can either drag like that, and I'll do the same at the end. I will comfort you. So another quick tip, you can go Command T if you're on Mac and that will trim. Get rid of that. And then all we're going to do is take the fade tool, which you can find up here. And all we're going to do is fade in the start and the end of each clip. When you need me, I will comfort you. So I can still hear a bit of clicking at the end. So all I'm going to do is drag that in a bit closer. See how it sounds now. When you need me, I will comfort you. There we go, and now we have a nice clean end to that recording. And basically I would do that for every bit of vocal I record, because when we start putting things like compression on in the mixing stage next, that's just going to bring up the volume of these little noises. So we want to get rid of them now so that we can't hear them later on. So number 2, I would look at timing and tuning your vocal parts. So we've done the clear up, we've got rid of all those horrible noises in between. The next thing to do to get that professional pop level sound is we want to start making sure our vocal tuning is tight. So I personally use a program called Melodyne, which is great because it's really flexible, but there are different programs you can use, but I'll show you Melodyne. So once you've imported your vocal into Melodyne, this is what it's going to look like. So these are all the different notes I've sang. And you can see these different lines here of the grey and the white, they're the different notes in the scale. So for example, this note here is bang on that D flat, which is exactly where we want it because it's in tune. Whereas this note up here, you can see is a bit to the lower end of that E flat, meaning it's slightly flat. It's not too bad, but it's slightly flat. But these are the things that we might want to remedy. So my first Melodyne tip is, this is how it's just imported it, but it is a computer program, it's not perfect. So we just need to neaten it up and make sure it's reading the notes correctly. So for example, this note here, just a little bit flat on the B, you can see that it's actually dragging the note up from a B flat. So all I do there is I'd click this tool, which is a chop tool, and then just chop that apart. And then now it's assuming that note is always that B, and it's not going to get confused when we start tuning and thinking, oh, is it a B flat, is it a B? It's a clear B now. So I just chop up, I go through and just neaten it up and make sure it's reading all the notes as individual notes so that when they tune better. So we've got our vocal now, it's all chopped up. Melodyne is understanding it in the way we want it to understand it in terms of the notes. So the first thing I would do is click on this button here, and this is the pitch tool. And then by simply highlighting the whole thing, and double clicking on one of these notes, you'll see it automatically snaps it onto the grid. So now this B, which was slightly flat before, is now perfectly in the middle of this note, so it means it's bang on in tune. So let's have a listen now. This is now the official in tune version. When you need me, I will comfort you. This is works really well, but what you might get sometimes is that it's actually thought that this note was closer to the B flat than the B. That might be what Melodyne says, and then all you do to fix that, it will sound like this. When you need me, I will comfort you. So you can hear that's literally just the wrong note now, and all you'd have to do to remedy that is click on this select tool, and then because you're fixed onto the grid, you just move it up to the right note. So then you'd have your perfectly in tune vocal. When you need me, I will comfort you. So if you're happy with that, you can leave it there. If it's still feeling a bit off, what you can do is go in a bit further, and if we highlight the whole thing and look at this tool over here, this is the pitch tool again, but it's kind of universal for everything. So we open that up. This is pitch drift, and what pitch drift does is look at the waveforms, and if, for example, you become flat over a note, the waveform will be dropping. And what pitch drift does is it brings it up to the middle to make it a more consistent note. The problem with this is if you go too high, this is where you can start sounding T-Pain-y and a bit too over auto-tuned. So just be careful with that. But this is where your next step would be, if you think that maybe it needs a bit more fixing, you can drag this up maybe to 20-30%, see how that sounds, and go from there. The other tool we have is this vibrato tool, which if you click on the pitch here again and drop down to this second one with the wavy line. For example, this note at the end, you can see it sang a bit with some vibrato. If we don't like that, we just click, drag down, and we can literally take it all off, and now it will sound very auto-tuned. So that sounds now very robotic. But we've got that in between, so you can do this as well to get it to the right level of vibrato. But that is basically the simple terms I will do with tuning a vocal until I'm happy. You don't want to overdo it, but you don't want to underdo it. You need to make it sound good. So we've done our tuning, happy with our tuning. The next thing to do is look at timing, which is kind of the flow of the words. So what I would do now is I'd put the metronome on, or put the backing track on if you've got it, and then basically we listen to the vocal against the metronome or against the track. I will comfort you. And basically what you can do is you can actually go in with this tool here, the select tool, and you can individually start moving some of these notes. So if you decide, the U's come in too quick, I can start shortening that so it comes in a bit later, or I can extend this second note. But as you'll hear, you quickly start losing the natural flow if I play it back. When you need me, I will comfort you. This bit doesn't sound awful, but this front bit just sounds unnatural now. When you need me. So this is how you would go and fix any notes that are too early or too late. So my pro tip here is to try and move everything all as a chunk. So try, if one or two notes feeling a bit rushed or pushed, try and move the whole phrase to see if you can fit it in better. Because if you start digging in too close to those individual notes, you'll throw off the natural rhythm of the singer. So all you do here, select the whole thing, and then you can move it all as one, and you can fit it to your metronome or your backing track better. So give that a go, and then if you need to, you can get into the nitty-gritty a bit more. But once you've done that and you're happy that everything's in tune and timed, the next thing to do is to start looking at gain staging. So I'm going to close Melodyne now. I'm actually going to use a different project of mine to show you this. So I'm just going to open up a new project. So this is actually a recording that me and my a cappella group, the Sons of Pitches, did at this studio not too long ago. And as you can see, there's 5 of us here. So there's 5 recordings, and we've got multiple songs and multiple takes going across the project. All I'm going to do is focus on this first song here. So this is our cover of Let Me Entertain You. And basically, we are now going to be looking at what we call gain staging, which is basically making sure our levels are good before we start mixing. So the important thing here to watch out for is this master fader. So in Logic, these are our individual channel strips on the left. So for example, Mide, our beatboxer, that's his channel strip. As I click down, that's Josh's, that's Joe Bell's. And basically what we do is all of these get sent to this channel on the right, which is the master fader, okay? And that's basically the end, that's the whole project all in one, that's the whole song. So What we want to do here is make sure we're not getting close to peaking here, okay? And this is what the gain staging is. It's making sure that we're putting everything at a good volume to start off with so that we're not going to risk peaking and therefore distorting in the master fader. So if I play where we're at, so I'll play that again and just watch this fader here. So I'm looking at that, and that's saying minus 1.8. That's where it's peaking at the moment. So it's not distorting, but for me, that's still a bit too close to zero, because if we reach that zero, we start adding distortion. So I would aim always to get this maybe maximum kind of -6, really, especially if you're sending it off to a mastering engineer. You don't really want to go above that. So the way I would do that is, because it's taking all the individual tracks from each of these and combining them together, the way we fix this is by turning all of these tracks down and setting a good level for them. And then when you add them together, the sum of the total will be lower, and therefore this will be a lower number here. So how we do that is, I always make sure I click on a channel and we use something called clip gain, which you'll find here. So technically you could use the fader to bring it down, or you could go in here and add a gain plugin and then turn it down here. But the problem with doing it here is that it can get in the way of your other plugins and kind of get mixed up, and it's hard to follow exactly what you're doing. So by doing it up here on the clip gain, you are making sure it's the first thing that happens so it doesn't affect any more processing you do. So let's just zoom in. So I would start by trying to get these individual channels sitting probably at about -10 dB. That's kind of where, you know, -10 and -12, that's kind of where a nice spot usually is. So if I play me days in isolation, so already I'm looking at this one now, because that's me days channel. He's peaking at -3, which is too high for me. And also, if you keep watching it as it's playing, you see it hits the -3 and it's kind of going up to -6. So what I would do, I'd look at that and go, okay, I want to hit maybe -12. So all I do is take this gain all the way down by 6 dB, and that will take those -6 peaks down to about -12. So now let's have a listen. You can see down here, perfect, peaking about -12. That's exactly what I want. So I'll go through and do that on all of the channels just so we get a nice average level. So I'll go for Josh first. Now what I've gone and done is turned down those individual channels. So let's look back at this master fader, and hopefully now, because I've gone and turned down the inputs at the clip gain, hopefully this will start looking better and being less than -6. Let's have a look. So at the moment we're hitting about -6, which is okay. I'd probably go maybe a little bit lower and maybe go through and take a few dB off. The reason I do that is because when I send to that mastering engineer, I'm looking at that fader to be hitting -6. As I'm going through and processing, there might be some changes in gain, so I want to give myself even more headroom so that if I put a compressor on, etc., then it's not going to up the volume so much that it knocks this over -6. So once you're happy with your gain staging and you've done your tuning and your timing and you've gone through and cut out all those silences, you're in a much better place to start mixing. And like I said at the start, we've done all this just to make sure the audio signals are as clean as possible, and we're not going to be introducing any unwanted distortions from having things too loud in the first place when we come to mixing. So they are my 3 essential tips before you start mixing. Make sure you get those silences out, make sure you edit your tuning and timing so that it's how you want it to sound, and make sure you set the gains of the individual tracks right so you're not overloading that master fader, because that will be a killer when it comes to mixing. So join me for the next and last video in the series where we're going to start getting into the world of mixing vocals. So if you like this video, make sure to check out all the other videos on the Orcs YouTube channel for more music tips. If you want a better way to share your music or get feedback from collaborators, head to orcs.app to download the desktop app. You can follow me at Joe Novelli Music and follow the studio here at Grosvenor Road Studios. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you for the last video. Bye.